We're going to start this lesson by recapping something you would have learned in Algebra 1. So 1, 2, and 3 are just lines, basic lines that you have to graph. So you really shouldn't need a table to do this. You should know, okay, for number 1, I start at 0. That's my y-intercept, and my slope is going to be rise 3 and to the right 1. And then I just connect them. But if you're in a jam and you forget, you can always make a table. So you have an x column and a y column, and you're just going to pick random values to substitute in for x. So for example, I could use -1, 0, and +1. So when I put -1 in for x, I get -1 for y, and 0 and 1. And if you graph those, you'll find that you have a line that goes through 0 with a slope of 1. For this one, again, if I use -1, 0, and 1, and I substitute those in, I'll have -1. That gets me +1. -0, 0, and -1 is -1. And it'll almost look like this graph, except it'll be flip-flop. So it'll be going downhill this time. So those are review graphs, things you would have learned last year. The next 6 functions, they are all new. So we would not have graphed these in Algebra 1. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to make some tables for each of these. And we're going to pick some numbers to substitute in for x. So I might use -2, 0, and 2. Now keep in mind, the more x's that you use, the better graph you get. So -2 squared is +4, 0 squared is 0, 2 squared is 4. And then you'll go through and you just plot those points. So -2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 is here, 0, 0, and then 2, 4 will be over here. And this is going to kind of look like a U. So we'll make sure we curve that bottom. So again, if you do use more points, it would be more of a curve. Absolute value, again, I'm just going to use the same numbers, -2, 0, and 2. It really doesn't matter which numbers you pick. You just want to pick enough that gets you a full graph. So the absolute value of -2 would be +2. The absolute value of 0 is 0, and the absolute value of 2 is 2. So we're going to go -2, 2, 0, 0, and 0, 2, or 2, 2. So it'll almost look like what we just graphed, except this is definitely going to be more of a V. The absolute values will look like V's, and squared functions will look like U's. For number 6, it's a problem like this that we need to be careful. So for example, we couldn't use -1. The reason we can't do that is you really can't do the square root of -1 and get a real answer in this column. So you gotta be careful about making sure, hey, am I allowed to put that in for x? Is that gonna make sense? So the smallest number we could put in for x would be 0. And we could definitely use 1. We can do the square root of 1. Now, I wouldn't use 2, basically because the square root of 2 is 1.41 something something. It's really an ugly number. I don't really feel like graphing that. So I'm going to be selective and use 4 because I can do the square root of 4 and get a nice pretty whole number. So the square root of 0 is 0. The square root of 1 is 1. And the square root of 4 is a nice pretty whole number. That's definitely more doable. So we're going to put these points on here quick and see what kind of graph we get. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So we're going to kind of get like half of a sideways U for the square root function. For number 7, we're going to actually use a few more points just because this graph is a little more complex. So we're going to do like -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. That'll get us a pretty accurate graph. So if I do -2 cubed, I get -8. -1 cubed, I get -1, 0, 1, and 8. And then we'll go ahead later on and we'll graph those points. For number 8, I want you to go ahead and use -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2 again. And then for number 9, we're going to use -3. We'll do -1, 0, and we'll do 1 and 2. So go ahead and substitute those in and get your y's, and then unpause the video and see if your answers match mine. So really quick, you want to check and see if you got these following numbers. You should have come across a problem with 8. When you put in 0 for x, you should have realized that there's a problem with that. 1 over 0 your calculator will say error. That's undefined. So we're not allowed to divide by 0, so we actually can't use that for x. So trying to get you to catch on that, oh, we can only use negatives and positives. 0 doesn't work in this problem, so I crossed that out. And then for number 9, you should have got some fractions. So remember, negative exponents mean fractions. They don't mean negative answers. So 2 to the negative third is 1/8. 2 to the negative 1 is 1/2. So make sure you don't have like -8 and -2 on here. That's not right. So what you're going to do next is I want you to go ahead and plot the points and then try your best to connect them, and we'll see how our graphs match up. So our first graph will look like half of a regular U and half of an upside down U. So that's kind of what a cubic function looks like. And then number 8, I didn't connect these yet because I wanted to show you how to connect them, but you definitely should have plotted your points like I did. And then we're actually going to connect them with 2 separate curves here. So there's the first one, and then the second one will look like this. The biggest thing is you can't get 0 as an answer, which means no axes on your graph, so don't cross those axes. And then the last but not least, number 9, this is what we call an exponential function. So it looks like a curve, and you're just going to kind of graph along that curve. So it shoots up really high to the right, and it gets closer and closer to the x-axis on the left, but it will never actually touch the x-axis. So these are your basic functions in Algebra 2, and it's going to help you a lot if you memorize the characteristics of these graphs. So that will make things go quicker for you, which will make things a little bit easier for you.